Okay, it is 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, Tuesday, May the 31st, 2022. Welcome to week number week four of Drugs and Crime. I'm Professor Richard Wright, and I'll be with you for the next hour or so talking about the details. Remember, one of the things that is so important is to listen to what I say in the lectures and then to include not the PowerPoint, but the rubrics and what's said in the module. I always go over the assignment so you clearly understand what the expectations are. If you don't look at the recording, I can tell from some of the assignments. So anyway, at the end of this week, weeks 1 to 3 will not be accepted because we only have a couple more weeks left after that. You'll see this in a minute. So let me share my screen as we go into what we have here. Okay, so let's look and see if I have any messages. I don't from anybody. So let's look at the grade book. And you can see I've completed weeks 1 and 2. I'm working on week 3. I have 11 more written assignments to grade and 7 discussion posts. I've completed the quizzes for week 3 and the live classroom. All right, so this week, the discussion is involving forfeiture, and I will mention that. The written assignment is policies to reduce and prevent drug-related crime. And then you have the quiz that you know that is timed, and then your live classroom lecture. All right, let's take a look at the calendar again. Look at the month view, and you can see where we are. This is the last day of the month. Your initial posts are due tonight, and then your lecture, and then your reply post is due Saturday the 4th. And let me flip the calendar. So you see the 4th. Written assignment is the 5th, the live lecture, and the quiz. Okay. And you can see we have just 2 more lectures after today, and that the course will end on the 17th, not the 18th, not the 19th, but the 18th. All assignments must be in by then. No exceptions unless you've been granted a incomplete. However, I will know about that because you will have dialogued with me about it. And at this juncture, if it was me, I'd be reaching out by text or email. Text or either phone call, because we're getting late into the term. All right, so we're wrapping up. So let's get back into the announcements for today, for week 4. Drug-related criminal activity, law enforcement perspective. We'll be talking about that, reading chapter 6 and 7 of the text that I gave you, and I sent you the corresponding PowerPoints. And we're going to talk about combating drug trafficking organizations, law enforcement response to the heroin epidemic. And then you'll see a short video about that. And then this is a reminder about the lecture that's taking place. Shows that the discussion assignment forfeiture, as I mentioned earlier, is due initial post tonight, and the reply post is due Saturday. Finally, the written assignment, policies to reduce and prevent drug-related crime, and then there's a quiz. Then, of course, remember you got your key phrase. Be sure to complete the mid-quarter survey. It is mid-quarter. So I'm encouraging you once again, continue to be strong and finish strong. And you know what my motto is at Versus Springboard to Success. I've shared that with you all term. In looking at this, you can see what that is all about. Okay, so as time winds up, we keep moving forward. So drug-related criminal activities. So let's talk about the written assignment first. Start out with that. As you already know, you're going to be using the fact pattern that involves Dave's life circumstances, and that um, this week you'll need to address by describing the origin and development of international drug cartels, the involvement in manufacture, sale, and distribution of illegal drugs, identify the connection to Dave's scenario, connected to Dave, identify interdiction policies, how agencies work together, and legislative efforts to reduce and prevent the manufacture, sale, and distribution of illegal drugs. Compare how these interdiction policies and legislative efforts are similar and different for, I want to see each one mentioned: gangs, organized crime syndicate, and international cartels. Provide an example and explanation of an interdiction policy or a legislative effort for gangs, how to deal with gangs, organized crime, and international cartels. Provide at least one credible source. Now, listen to me good. Don't get into the habit of just providing one. That's the minimum requirement. But your papers are better when you have citations, credible sources provided throughout the body of the paper. Remember the purpose of citations or credible sources. They provide support to the statements that are included in your papers, and they give them some credibility. And it also provides details to the reader as to where you got the information, which is absolutely critical, so that if someone wants to go look at the information themselves. So APA formatted reference as well. So you have to have a reference page and then citations. Now, the paper, double space, cover page, reference page, and 2 pages. Did you hear me say 2? Not 1.5, not 1 3/4, because you'll fall short. And you'll see in the rubric, submit your assignments as a Word document. As a Word document. Very important that you understand that. A Word document. No other format will be accepted. So here are the rubric requirements. As I said, if you end up with no citations, you're going to have incomplete or incorrect information. If you leave Dave out, you're going to have it over here. Incomplete or incorrect. Remember, if you have to have credible sources throughout the paper. Incomplete or incorrect comparison, support it with citations. Provide incomplete example of interdiction, examples, gangs, provide support for that. And same thing for organized crime and international cartels, credible sources throughout the paper. And then you have to meet the minimum requirement. So what you want to work from is this column. That's the column you want to work from. And I keep saying it over and over and over and over. Please do not submit a paper for me 1.5 pages, because you're going to run short in terms of points. If it was me, I'd want to be trying to maximize. And you know what? I think you should do your assignment as if you're preparing it for your employer. you know you put your best foot forward when it's for your employer. So I would recommend that you get in that mindset in terms of completing these written assignments. As I said at the outset of this course, I don't want you to try to earn an A or a B. I want you to learn the material so that you can become a better professional in criminal justice. In the process of doing so, if you do a really good job, you'll get an A. If you do a job that's a little under that, you'll get a B, and then so forth and so on. That's the way that I view things. Uh, that's why I tell students, don't call me or text me or email me and ask me how to get a C in my class. So anyway, that's the assignment. If you have any concerns or questions, don't wait till the last minute. Reach out to me so you can get it done. I certainly don't leave any questions about that type of stuff. All right, let's move to the discussion assignment, forfeiture. And so you're going to consider these directions. All right, and you're going to read this about what forfeiture is all about. And we'll talk about that a little tonight. And you're going to consider this fact pattern, both paragraphs, all the way down to here. All right. So your first post, identify 2 arguments in support of forfeiture programs. In support. Next, identify the property or items that you believe can be lawfully forfeited as associated with and connection with Mary's illegal drug activity, and then what factors should be considered and decided what property is connected to Mary's drug activity. Should forfeiture programs be limited, eliminated, or expanded? And then your reply post. Okay. It says be sure to include proper citations. I've told you I'm not that dogmatic about it. If you do, fine, I'll let you know. I appreciate that. All right. And finally, the initial post is due tonight. Your reply post is due Saturday. Then your quiz, which I recommend you do at the end of the week, but you do it any way you want to. Then your live classroom phrase goes here. And then your live classroom recording, which I will be placing here, taking this out and adding the recording, which we're making right now. And you'll have the link to that right there. And that way you'll know what the key phrase is for this. So we're going to talk about these 2 topics: combating drug trafficking organizations and law enforcement response to the heroin epidemic. All right, so you should be aware that drugs don't just come out of nowhere. There are organized processes set up to distribute and market and get drugs out on the streets so that they can reach the customers, those individuals who are, and I'm not talking about the dealers, I'm talking about the individuals who buy them, who are actually drug users. Most are addicts. So where do they come from? We have drug trafficking organizations locally, but primarily you're dealing with Mexico and China, and they're really organized. They keep records. They market their products to maximize their products. Now, specifically talking about right now for a moment, the Chinese drug trafficking organizations, they deal primarily with opium and heroin of the United States. And they add fentanyl and cafentany, which you should know is something that's put into elephants to cut it, and it's sold on the streets. Uh, uh, Fentanyl is a synthetic drug, and prescription drugs described by physicians. And I already told you what caffeine is. Anyway, you should be aware that the drugs that are sold on the streets are not pure drugs, that they are cut for stretching out, and they don't care what's in there. Their idea is to just make money. So they're predatory. They seek individuals who are users. And then there are individuals who are users who become dealers to support their habits. So nobody knows what's in this stuff, and it goes into the body. And so there's a good article that you can read, which you want to take some time and read that over. It will help you with your assignment as well. On the other hand, Mexico, drug trafficking organization, or what we refer to as cartels, they operate through gangs primarily through gangs, increasing their profits. So the gangs are the ones on the street that are selling this stuff, and the proceeds are smuggled back to Mexico or either laundered in the United States into phony accounts or offshore accounts. And the money is used for profits, but one of the most important things that is used for is to pay off corrupt United States and Mexican officials. You should be aware that the distribution of drugs will not flourish without the help of some criminals in the system. In other words, corrupt border patrol officials from the United States and Mexico. All right. So along with this, there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of guns involved, a lot of high-powered weapons that are used to protect their territory. And just to name a few, the Sinaloa cartel, the Jalisco New Generation cartel, the Juarez cartel, the Gulf cartel, and the Familia, just to mention a few. One of the local individuals here that we are familiar with, that's been in the news, is El Chapo, Juan Guzman, and he is incarcerated, but I think his wife also was incarcerated, but his son is operating the business. But the key thing is that the war escalates to the streets and in the neighborhoods, and it creates a very serious problem. So we have them. So what is our response to that? We have what we call the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration in the United States, and they're all over the world, and they fight against the Mexican cartels. The DEA agents are in more than 69 countries now and conduct investigations to disrupt their buy sales, where, for example, they'll set up deals to try to buy drugs to trap people. And they work on multi-jurisdictional levels, from the federal all the way down to the local. So that includes the state and the county. When I was a police officer, I worked with the Cook County Drug Task Force in dealing with that type of activities. So we work together to try to deal with this issue. So now we have to work together as a unit, because we have all kinds of challenges. As I said earlier, undercover officers, informants, and that's one of the ways that we try to get people. What it is we can arrest the small people, so to speak, the dealers on the streets. But our objective is to go up the chain and get them to flip over and give them a lighter sentence so we can get up the supply chain. The idea is to cut off the flow of the drugs, but as you probably can determine, it's not very good. We deal with wiretaps and other uh, techniques that the law allows. All right. So working together with the DEA is the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, a federal organization. And they work primarily because of the fact, as I said earlier, you're dealing with weapons, high-powered weapons, semi-automatics. Now, it's interesting we have semi-automatics as a problem. Uh, these people that are dealing with these semi-automatic weapons are not the same people who are shooting up these schools and shooting up stores and shooting up churches and other places like that. No, these are people who have these weapons strictly to protect their business. We also have the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, which came about in 2001 after the September the 11th. And so we find vehicles crossing the border. And by the way, you heard they're talking about the wall. It's not a big deal because most of the drug activity from Mexico comes through actual checkpoints. And so you have the Border Patrol agents inspecting vehicles, and then there's the feds who are doing long-term work. State patrol officers conduct interdiction, working together with the feds to identify drug trafficking and shipment on tips that they get. In addition to the efforts by law enforcement agencies on the various levels, state, county, and municipal, these agencies work together, as I said before, to assist. It's a joint effort, and it takes every one of them. And this is just a map showing you the organizations, okay, and how they exist. Now, you should be aware that they're very sophisticated. We've found weapons, and we've also found drugs, like, for example, car seats that are actually manufactured and made from drugs. There's false gasoline tanks, all kinds of false windshield wiper containers. There's all kinds of ways. The sky is the limit with vehicles. They've actually put them in the tires as well. So there's so many different ways that it's happened. They'll put it under vehicles. They'll put them on people, and they call those people mules, but it's not a whole lot of that that's really big, because one of the things that mules would do in Mexico is that they would put heroin into a balloon, and the individuals would swallow the balloons, and then when they got in stateside, they would give them a laxative. So you can figure that out from there. But unfortunately, what would happen a lot of times is that those balloons would rupture inside the bodies of those individuals, and they would die of overdoses. So those are just some of the things. But just be aware that all hands on deck is what's necessary to deal with this. All right. It's like a cat and mouse game. So law enforcement is working hard to deal with and recognizing that we have a heroin epidemic. We'll be talking about that in the next next week we'll see a long video that's chasing the dragon. I'm going to show you a short one today. And so the key thing that we are working on as law enforcement locally is to recognize that there is a very serious problem, and that individuals oftentimes will start out with innocent pain medication and graduate to heroin. And the heroin is not that pure. Remember, I told you it's cut, and that it adversely affects the breathing. There is a book that I have here. Let me pull it up and show it to you. I have it right here by my desk. Give me 1 second. There it is. It's called From Dope to Hope, and it involves a man in recovery, a guy named Tim Ryan. Tim Ryan came to the Rasmussen campus a few years ago, and I recommend this book. You can still get it on Amazon, From Dope to Hope. And it gives an account of this man, how he was a drug addict and how he ended up becoming a drug counselor, and that he talks about that one of the things that he unfortunately was not able to do was save his own son, who overdosed on drugs. And he talks about the criminal life that he led to support the drug habit and everything. I highly recommend it. Again, it's called From Dope to Hope, A Man in Recovery. Tim Ryan, if you can get this book, okay? And like I said again, I think it's still available on Amazon. Let me double check a minute here, but I think it is. Let me see. Okay, I'm gonna type it up. It was Dope to Hope. Yeah, it's available at paperback, and it's $15.97, and it's also available in Kindle form. So you can order that as well. I have it here on my phone here, so you can get it. $15.97. I recommend the book, and you can get that book. Okay. All right. So we have a problem, and as law enforcement people, we recognize that we are losing the war on drugs. And so we recognize that now, as law enforcement, we must come up with various measures to help individuals. And one of the things that law enforcement was trained on years after I left was providing what we call Narcan, which is Noxolone. And it's a prescription drug that is an antidote to opioid overdose. And what it does is it blocks the effects of the opioid and reverse the overdose, and it saves the lives of people. And dealing with people who have been graduated to oxycodone, hydrocodone, and morphine. But the first responders are trained how to utilize this. It's a very expensive thing. And so in 2015, the FDA, Federal Food and Drug Administration, approved a nasal application. Before that, it was a needle, which made it easier. And it's easier, and there's minimal training needed. and then you want to read more about it, you can click on this article. But you should be aware that Narcan helps save the lives of many individuals. One of the problems with it, though, as I constantly remind people, is that it's based on a time issue. If you don't get in time, then you won't be able to save the life of that individual. Okay, but there are, and you should be aware that this heroin epidemic is at all levels of schools, even in grammar schools, high schools, colleges. It's uh, no race issue. It's no economic issue. It's all across the board. So I'm going to take a few minutes before we conclude, and I'm going to try to put this in here and let you pay attention to this. It's not very long. It's called Chasing the Dragon, and you'll hear a law enforcement perspective of it. Subtitles are not available anymore. We used to have them. Okay. We've had trouble showing us. Here we go.
Prescription pills and opiates has definitely become an increasing problem that we see, not only involving the crimes that investigate actual drug diversions, but it involves other things too. People start committing other crimes when they start seeing, the need that they have to get these drugs. I think the worst part of it is that it's starting at kids with a very young age. Kids that are, middle school even are starting to find out what these pills are, and they might think it's fun at first. And then, you talk to them a year, 2 years later, and you realize it's a different story. I mean, so, just the degree that people will go to get these pills is insane. I mean, I've seen people that drive 7 hours one way every month each way, so that's a 14-hour round trip just to get these pills because, so you need a job. You can't work your job anymore because all you care about is driving up to get these pills. Life's over.
Kind of soft, so let's try to go back to the other.
Just out of a local strain. Letting out in the woods. Everybody thinks they pop a few pills. It's no big deal. You young kids out there, you better be very, very aware of what's going on with these pills. You can get addicted with one pill, and for the rest of your life, it will absolutely ruin you. It doesn't discriminate against you young or old, or you're black, or you're white, or you're male, or you're a female. I've arrested from 12 years old to 86 years old. I've arrested grandma and grandpa. I've arrested a young boy that takes the pills from his parents' cabinet and takes them to school and gives them to some other kids at school. When somebody gets sick, gets rushed to a hospital, and thank God doesn't die. I've worked probably at least 24 overdose deaths that are 100% related to prescription meds where it's too late, they're already dead.
A lot of students went down the road, a lot of young people go down the road of trying a drug for recreational purposes, and they don't understand the devastation that it has to their own life and the lives of their parents. I should add, victims of the crime include infants. We have had subjects where pregnant women who gave birth to oxycodone, opiate-addicted babies and infants. They even had to have the baby in jail. Um, it's a growing problem as well.
Seen a lot of overdoses, a lot of deaths. Scary thing is it's getting younger and younger. It used to be the heroin overdoses seemed like they were all adults. Lately they've been getting younger and younger, low 20s, even into their high teens. I've talked to hundreds of heroin addicts or opiate addicts, and they all tell me the same thing. If they could do anything, one thing different, they never would have started in the first place. That's the one regret that they all have, is that they started when they were young, and once you're an addict for life, and that's the way to avoid that, is just to never do it.
We're seeing a dramatic shift in how it's affecting the lives of young people. They're experimenting with friends at parties, and I think it's safe to take pills from the medicine cabinet or a friend. And during a 1 week period, we had 9 fatal overdoses in a 3 jurisdiction area. And over the Christmas holiday, I read 2 obituaries of people that I had arrested for prescription fraud and related offenses. Their parents buried them. They were young, 20-some years old.
Okay, as you can see,
Hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Supervisory Special Agent.
take that out. As you can see, there is a problem. Let me hook up my headset again. Okay, and it's amazing. It's a very serious problem, and as I said, it involves very, very, very serious attempts. So next week, we're going to talk about some other things that law enforcement is doing relating to what we call deflection, and I'll talk about that during next week's lecture before we get into the video. But be aware that in addition to the Narcan, we are also reaching the stage where we want to try to get people help, but we'll deal with that with next week's lecture. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to provide you with a key phrase, and that key phrase is Narcan. Narcan. And you should learn about what that is and how it works. So give me that to get your points. I will see you next Tuesday at 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time with week number 5. In the meantime, if you are behind, you know what to do. Let's get those assignments in. All right. So I'm going to say good night.